the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve agenda. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comments? Public hearing for the authorization of a loan agreement not to exceed $2,050,000 general obligation capital loans. Motion to open the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Jack,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Any comments from the public? Sandy, have you received anything?
I have
Rick?
received nothing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
John,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Adopt a resolution approving official statement.
There are two things that we have to do to effectuate the sale of any general obligation bond. One is to approve the OS, which is the document that you received in your packet. There is one modification to that OS, and that is that it has now been shaved from $2,050,000 to $2,045,000. So there's $5,000 less on it. I think probably just to highlight, this is a 10-year flat bond. In other words, the interest and the principal will be, payments will be effectively in equal increments. They'll slightly vary from year to year. And while we know what the payments for each of the years are, you can see that on the very first page here. The changes in the amounts will be based upon the interest cost against the outstanding principals. We will not know those interest rates until we complete the sale, which will be 2 weeks from now. And it is being underwritten by Northland Securities. A major portion of the OS is talks about the demographics and the government's history as far as number of employees, who the council members are, what kind of revenues we have generated in our community. It also makes mention of the existing debt service that we have and a debt service schedule that would combine this with an estimated principal and interest payment along with the P&I that we're paying for the 2014 issue. Shows that we will be making payments right around $470,000 for the next 6 years actually, for the general obligation debt. And then obviously after 2025, that falls off because then we'll have retired that one that we engaged in 2014.
You don't have it. You don't have your computers, these two documents. That's the first one, and this is the Northwest.
The OS has been reviewed by Ehlers and Cooney, which is our bond counsel. They have made their comments and incorporated that into the operating statement. Actually, it's not anything of consequence that they put in. They made note of a couple of things from the standpoint of future reviews by the federal government as it relates to representations of what's in the document from the standpoint of making sure that the city is truly advocating and preparing information that is true and salient to our community's standing. The fact of the matter is that this issue is about as simple as they get as far as bonds are concerned. We are not selling this as a rated issue. And the reason for that is that we got a rating last year, which was A-. We felt that it wasn't necessary to go to the market to get a rating standard. In fact, Northland Securities even recommended that there's no reason for us to get it rated. Everybody knows that this is going to be about an A grade type of instrument anyway when we go out to actually sell the bonds. A major portion of the packet that is related to what Northland Securities has in this situation, in this OS, really is just a replication of our most recent audit. So the fact of the matter is that most of the things that we have going on in this packet really are about the first 25 pages. The continuing disclosure certificate is something that will have to be filled out as an example once the sale actually is completed. But in fact, this document is being prepared with the review that I've done along with Northland Securities and with bond counsel's recommendation to approve.
Alan, on the back of the second page, but it has the mayor and the council and Bridget's names in there.
Did they get that? Oh, they didn't get that one changed. We'll get that changed.
All right, that's the only thing I see.
I sent that one in, I guess. I
Not
didn't.
that it's,
No,
not that it's a big deal, but it's
We'll get
still,
no, I
not
actually
correct.
sent that one through. I never even look at it again. That should be, that should be Brenda's name in there now. And we're changing the title to finance manager, so.
so I guess that'll need to be changed.
No material impact on the OS in that case.
No, it's not a big deal, it's just,
No, I'll get it right.
this needs to be correct. Anybody got any questions on this?
So our first payment, if I'm looking at this right, our first payment's June of next year, is that right?
No, we have a, how GeoDebt works is that you pay half the interest every 6 months. So our first interest
December, I
payment
see that now.
will be December. The other half of that interest plus the principal for the year will be made in June
Okay, all right.
Of 20.
of 20.
Yeah.
Well, of fiscal year 20, June of 19, or December of 19 for that first
38,000.
Oh,
right.
11 months, 10 and a half months from that.
And we're snugging this in purposely to get this thing going. First of all, because of rates, as we talked about before. And secondly, this fits in really nice with doing a GO bond every 5 years, one that would be paid for by property taxes this year. And one 5 years from now ostensibly would be paid for by local option sales tax, so that we would have these going side by side, offset by 5 years.
So if we get this done in the next month or so, and then we could get some engineering work done, is there a possibility of starting some work yet this summer?
I don't know about summer,
Or
but
fall.
certainly fall. In fact, I'm going to encourage that. I think North Street needs to get done.
Yeah, we got a street that need a
No,
attention.
we're.
Sand and gravel mixed up.
No, one of the things that we're looking at is probably perhaps breaking this expenditure up into two lifts here, one in the fall, one next year. The reason it makes sense to do it, not just because of North Street, is that you got the hospital and you got a lot of road around the hospital. We're trying to set up an appointment. We haven't heard yet, right, Chris?
No.
We're trying to set up an appointment with hospital administrators as to how we would stage all the construction in the hospital area. Because not only do you have these projects, but you also got a water main project that's up there too.
But I think the hospital is also planning a project in 2020, redoing their parking lot So we gotta have to coordinate that with them to make sure we get it together properly.
That's why we're trying to get that set up.
Do we have an idea of how much we're gonna be able to do on the $2 million?
I think we'll have a better idea. I think we'll have a better idea once we get HR Green engaged here, which is another thing that we need to do here in the upcoming month. I'm pretty reasonably confident that we can get everything around the hospital and North Street and that done.
From like the cemetery to,
They'll be from Washington Street, which is at the bottom edge of the cemetery, down to Short Street or Arkansas, Short Street.
Short.
That, on that side. And then, of course, we got Columbia goes from the western parking lot all the way down to West Street. That's really chewed up too. So I think, I don't know, but I think that we might wind up doing one this year and one next year as far as those two parallel streets, given the circumstances of having accessibility into the
And then
hospital.
trying to throw like Good and North in between Columbia.
That will have, it's not good. That good is not on the list. In fact, nothing else is on the list up there. But Christie, that little street that leads to the parking lot from West Street, that's kind of chewed up. But the fact of the matter is that in that case, that's where we're going to do water main work. So we're probably going to go in there and do that street while we're doing the water main work.
So that'll be part of the water main project.
Yeah, and when we got these two things merging together, it may very well be that we might contract it all out under one contract, maybe. And obviously pay from it from two major sources, different sources. It might make sense that way. But that is something that we need to consult with HRG as much as anything about coming up with that idea. Now, I know that's getting a little off task here, but that's kind of the thinking that we're at right now. So adopting the official statement is the first thing, and then of course right after this, you need to adopt the second resolution instituting proceedings to take the action to go and sell these bonds.
Anybody else, is there any more questions on the official statement portion? Motion to approve.
Move to approve the resolution approving the official statement.
Second.
Aaron,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Earl,
Yes.
Resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the issuance of not to exceed $2,045,000 general obligation capital loan notes.
With this approval, you would then have Northland Securities as our designated underwriter to go out and sell the bonds, and it would bring back sale data 2 weeks from tonight, and ostensibly, you all would be approving a sale and getting $2 million set to come to the city. If everything goes according to schedule, we will actually be receiving that money the 3rd or 4th week of March.
Move to adopt the resolution.
Earl,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
New business, consider approval of gas tech job description.
Danny?
We talked about that last week, we just brought it back with a change to 30 minutes. I don't know if we want to have more discussion or approve it with the change from 15 to 30 minutes.
Anybody got any other questions about it?
It's the last sentence of the first paragraph in the thing.
I think so, yeah.
Second to last. Second to last.
Is this gonna, so we're changing the job description, what else do we need to change to make it official?
The job description you're talking about?
No, to 30 minutes. Is there anywhere else that
No,
says?
there's nothing else, nothing IUB or nothing else to make it official, it's just this job description and.
So then this will, as soon as we approve it tonight, then that'll be the new standard?
Yes.
And that's across, is that across the board for gas, electric,
It's,
No, it's just that.
It's just gas specific?
Yeah, just that job description there.
what's electric? Do we know?
I don't know. We need to probably talk about that next time. We need to.
Next time we need to hire.
Huh?
Next time we need to hire.
Well, we need to start doing
We're gonna
that.
start working on that next. Yeah.
We need to hire.
But,
But that'd be pretty standard, I think, to electrical, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you want to kind of cross the
Yeah.
board.
and I think we kind of gotta have the understanding that we need to go through all the job descriptions and all that stuff to make everything match, and that's something that we're gonna be working on here, that once we get budget done,
Right.
trying to get everything to correspond with each other. We got too much stuff says too many things, different things, so. But motion to approve,
Move to approve.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consider selling old hoist by sealed bid.
Yeah, so let's put that on. We talked about it last month. I know we bought the new hoist last month, so I just want to get rid of that old hoist out of there and want to either sell it by a sealed bid. And, you know, whoever buys it can take it down. And, you know, with the, of course, we're releasing liability, so we're not liable for it once they buy it, but just like to sell it and get it out of there. So we put the new one in.
We've had a lot of inquiries.
Yeah, a lot of people want to buy it, so I just want to do it fair and get it out so people can do a sealed bid. And
It won't pass inspection for us.
If it's
Somebody else wants to buy it.
If it's worth buying, why didn't we fix it?
Oh, it costs more to fix it than we could have just bought a new one. I mean, it's, you know, but people use it, like the yarns are for their safety, yes. Ours is, we're municipalities. so
I
we
can buy it and put it in my shop. and use it
Yeah,
like
you
it
can.
is.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. You guys can do what you want.
All right. Motion to approve selling the hoist.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discuss and consider parking for tenants on and off the square. I put this on there. We've got some people that live in some apartments on the square and one block off of the square that get parking tickets on a regular basis. Because they really don't have anywhere to park to go to their home, because you can't park there from midnight to 5 in the morning. So I was wondering if we could come up with some kind of a parking permit, something they can hang on their mirror so that the police officers know that they live there, that they're not leaving their car there overnight, or they're not in an establishment, you know, on the square or anywhere, and shouldn't be parked there, but they live there, they got a residence there and need a place to park. So, I don't know, I guess just discussion, what's everybody think? I mean, I was thinking, do we do a $20 or $25 yearly parking permit? Get them a thing to hang on their mirror so that we don't give them tickets?
Can I add some context? Would that be all right? So I believe that the center is open for parking, right? And the reason that we don't allow parking right now on the edges, not that we can't change it, is for the street sweeper. That's the primary reason. So just to let you know the background
I'm
why.
talking, the place I'm particularly talking about is in front of Boone's old building.
Gotcha.
There's 2 or 3 parking spots up there. There's really no off-street parking anywhere else. And they I mean, that's the issue that brought this up, is the people that live there ask me what to do. They get parking tickets on a nightly basis. I just was wondering if there was some way to,
Join your credit union. Where they did.
so that the officers are aware if they live there or if they're just parked there. It should be,
They
I
can
guess.
park there, but that doesn't exclude snow moving.
No, if there's an ordinance that says you can't park there, you can't park there, but parking there in front of their building to, when they live upstairs.
How many, because I'm just trying to figure this out, because I don't know where Boone's is, I just had to ask Earl. How many,
It's the massage parlor. Spa.
how many, rental units are we talking about are affected in this situation?
I think there's 2 in that area, but then you've got above the old Chevy garage, you don't know where that is either. CarQuest,
Where the new pharmacy is.
Okay,
I don't know, what do we have, 15 or 20 properties, possibly 1 block off the square that require parking. We got, like, the ones also in front of, over by the Green Men.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 up there.
those folks park in the center though, don't they?
No, they park usually in front of their,
Oh, okay.
and by the phone company, and I'm assuming that's no parking midnight to 5 also.
I'm wondering whether we just change the ordinance on those side streets as opposed to a parking permit, let them park overnight. I mean, obviously.
There's a reason for it though also, because you got, I think the biggest thing is some of the businesses that are close, their patrons are parked there, leave their vehicles there overnight. And I think that's part of the reason why they did it, was to eliminate that.
I see.
So that's, I don't wanna get name specific, but, I think that's the reason why it's that way. So you don't have a bunch of people leaving their vehicles sitting there. I mean, I'm glad they leave them there versus driving home, but, I don't know, it's just discussion, whatever, I don't care what we do, I'm just wanting to do something to eliminate the problem.
Well, unfortunately, the city lot that's under the water tower is too far away,
Yep.
evidently.
Well, they've got,
There is,
Would be
the
nice.
couple that live up there have twin babies.
yeah,
So it is really handy for them. I mean, I'm not making excuses for them. It's just, behind the water tower is a long ways to walk.
could we approach the new pharmacy? Because he has parking on the east side of that building. Approach them to see if they would allow those people, maybe sell those people a parking spot in there, rent them a parking spot in there?
That'd be right there going down.
Yes,
Yeah.
I kinda like your idea about giving them a parking.
They got to
permit.
cross the
Live there.
street.
the guy across the street, yeah.
I mean, what would it cost us to issue them a parking permit?
Rectangle.
You're not gonna get any, I mean, it's not a revenue
No.
thing. I'm just
Just
thinking
giving them
if
a
you-
permit.
it's gonna cost us $10 to get a tag for them to hang probably in their window. And they're gonna need one for every vehicle. They got 2 vehicles, or they just get 2 and they have to move it. I mean,
Yeah.
The ordinance says Franklin Street on both sides from Columbia Street to Dodge Street.
Mhm.
what about Jefferson?
Jefferson Street, both sides from Columbia Street to Dodge Street.
What about from Madison to,
Madison on both sides from Locust Street to Walnut.
I mean, I'm talking Jefferson from Madison down
It's
to the west.
It's a
Jefferson Street
block
on both
away.
sides from Columbia Street to Dodge
It's,
Street.
yeah, it's one whole block
Yeah.
off the square.
Columbia Street to Dodge.
What about Dodge? Is there anything on Dodge?
If you parallel park on Dodge Street, it gets really, really narrow.
I know people used to park there beside the museum. Yes.
Yeah, see where them cars are parked, but then again, they're crossing the street to get to their,
I like your idea about giving the residents parking permits, say like 2 permits per address.
and I don't think it would be a bad idea either, even for the people that live on the square, even though we have center parking, to have a parking thing in their window so that, because if you got a couple of cars sitting there without a pass and you're trying to move them for snow, you need, if they got a ticket, you can look it up, see who it is,
Have the number on it.
have the number on it, you can get a hold of them. If it's not a resident, is it a guest or?
So are you suggesting that maybe we change the ordinance so that all overnight parking on the square and 1 block off would require a permit?
Sure.
I mean, there's one good thing about that is that when they come to get the permit, then we can also let them know, look, this is
Give them
what
the
makes.
instructions.
Well, and then if, since we don't have code red,
Mhm.
we can get the information that we need to get from them to get them information if they need to move their vehicle.
Surely there's another town somewhere that already does this that we could.
Oh, yeah, there
Give
are.
information.
While it's not considered quote unquote a moneymaker,
No.
people do put value into parking.
I'm not looking at it from a money
Yeah,
standpoint. I just, but even if they're parked on the square, but they're not parked in the right spot, just because they have a badge doesn't mean they don't get a ticket.
Yeah.
But it would just help eliminate us probably writing some tickets to some people that are just at home in bed.
We'll have to designate where they can't use those. I mean, the ordinance said they have to be written in a certain circumstance where if you have this, you can't park, like for instance, on the edges of the square, only in the middle, and designate other areas.
And we can put signs up that say center parking by permit only.
Well, we sell the permits, those people,
For the hours of midnight to 5.
we sell the permits, those people will clearly have instructions.
And we can even put it on the permit
Exactly.
where you're allowed to
Where they're
park.
valid for,
Right,
what street?
right.
I just think it'll eliminate some confusion and help the people that live above the square.
It's a good idea.
Motion to give us direction to formally bring it back.
Yeah, motion to bring us back information on and off the square parking permits.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved Class C liquor license with privilege for Keith's Foods. Approved sending 3 people to the Iowa Rural Development Summit Grinnell on April 11th and 12th.
So the Iowa Rural Development Summit this will be the 3rd year. Earl and I went last year, I believe, and
the year before.
you went the year before too. Who went with it? Oh, Glenn went with us from Main Street. And this is the group that's helped kick out this Rural Housing 360 that, now has got us talking about, new housing incentives, and they've done several other things. I think it's $135 to send 3 people plus your lodging. I think it's real well. They require a team of 3. My recommendation, I guess I'd like to go, but I don't feel I have to go. I think it'd be good for Tammy from Main Street to go. And then if whoever has interest from administration or council.
I've indicated to Chris that I'd like to go.
It's a really good opportunity, and that's why I'm saying, I would gladly let another person go if you are interested, because I think it's a really good opportunity for you to gain some network and some insight and hear about what other communities are doing.
I guess I'm nothing against Main Street, but I don't guess with the Iowa Rural Development, I don't really see the value of sending Main Street.
That's fine. I mainly suggested Main Street because we've done some other things with them and they went a couple of years ago, but if
But
you'd
does
rather-
this really, any of this fall under what we do in Main Street?
there might be one or 2 sessions that are targeted towards rural downtowns.
Usually, there's some targeted areas for downtowns, so.
I guess my idea would be if a couple council, I think you should go. If a couple council wanted to go, I guess if we needed to fill a spot, I would fill it with Main Street. That's my
3 person, no more.
Yeah, they specifically 3.
That's my opinion.
You have to have the name registered in advance.
You do, but if it swaps, they don't care. They just want to know that you're going to send 3 people.
You just might have to wear a name tag that's got somebody else's name on it. Call the county.
I got a letter
Dana a while ago, so.
Earl, or you or John, you got any interest in going?
I mean, I think it's a great conference and I would go again, yes. But I think it's also one of those that,
After
I
you
have
went
an
to it,
election
skipping
coming
a
up.
couple years isn't gonna
yeah,
hurt that.
I plan to run for reelection in the fall, but if I don't win, I hate to use that, take that information with me when I go. So one of the newer guys, to me, should go, but if you guys don't, I will.
Scott.
I don't know.
Come on.
It's what's the dates?
You're probably gonna be built.
Well, that was my thinking, is I would be willing to say I would go and go if I could, but
What days of the
something come
week
up that I could not.
Thursday and Friday.
So it's usually a Thursday and Friday, so.
So I could say I'll go, and if something happens, I absolutely cannot, and someone else or Earl can go, or.
Let's just bring that, I guess, as far as who's gonna go, we'll decide later. I guess do we need to get a motion to approve to go?
I gotta have the names, I gotta put some names in. We can change them, but I gotta put 3 names in, by Monday.
Go ahead and put my name down.
Oh, you can put my name down too.
There's 3.
There's 3. If that's all you need, we can come
You
up
know
with
what?
names.
I mean, Gary would like to go,
Oh.
so,
Okay, I didn't catch
you know. So I think it's a valuable, the networking that you make there is worth it. So, so to me, Chris and Gary and one other person, whoever that ends up being, put Darren's name in and go from there.
That's fine.
That's my recommendation.
Dan and I can flip a coin
I'll
Wednesday night.
Maybe you can each go
So-
for one day.
And you want me to make that a motion?
I don't know that we need specific names, we just need approval to go.
Um,
Send 3 people.
Move to approve.
And I'll second that, Darren. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now let's approve liquor license with privileges for Keys Foods.
Move to approve.
Second.
John,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Earl,
No.
Darren,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Approve Class C liquor license, beer wine with privileges for Grain Bend Steakhouse.
Move to approve.
What's with privileges?
privileges means like Sunday sales. I usually put those in, but each one of them had several different privileges. So I didn't, it may say on that paper you have, I don't know.
Okay. Just curious.
Scott,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Earl,
No.
Discuss business retention incentive for Shopco.
Turn it over to Chris. We've been talking about this for a couple of days. There's not big news.
Yeah, really, so we had a citizens group, as you know, John from DCDC has been working on getting a petition around, which I think all of you have signed to try to get Shopco. So I want to make it clear, this isn't an effort from Shopco reaching out to us, it's just saying, hey, what if we put together a package to try to incentivize Shopco to stay here? Other communities have done it and been successful. So just to give you some,
With Shopco or with other?
with Shopco.
Oh, okay.
There's no guarantee, and like I said, Shopco has already said the store is closing, and they have a date on when it's closing, so if we would do this, it's, it's an effort. But it also, the advantage is that if something happens that Shopco goes forward with their plans and closes, we've begun the process of thinking about how we might recruit this could be work to recruit an additional business, right? So just to give you some numbers of what we're talking about. Shopko does about $30,000 a year in property taxes. Approximately a third of that comes to the city, right? So that's about $10,000 a year in property taxes to the city. We believe a very conservative estimate of the local option sales tax that the city receives is about $20,000 a year. So if that store is empty, what we're talking about is two things. One is a local option sales tax from there goes to zero, so it's a loss of at least $20,000, we believe. And it's likely that the building would be devalued, assessed at a lower value, as much as almost 50%, reducing our property tax take to around $5,000, or $5,500. So when you look at that, if that building goes empty, we're looking at a potential loss in property taxes and sales tax of about $25,000 or more, at least $25,000. I think we all feel like that's a conservative number. So, you know, one of the options we threw out is what if we did a municipal abatement, a tax on an abatement of municipal portion of the property taxes, which, you know, if it stayed at the current valuation, would be $10,000 annually. And we haven't talked about a number of years or anything, but just as one possibility. So, you know, again, there's no guarantee this would work, but it's an effort from the community to do anything we can to reach out to Shopko and say this store is important to us and our community. I guess that's where we've talked.
Why don't you, Dan, give a little bit more of an update on information we've gotten today about this?
Today I got information that Shopko has made the decision to close another 100 and some stores, which brings them down to 100 and change left, which the way it looks is them stores are based on population base, not revenue base, not anything else, which makes me think they possibly have a buyer for that group. And I think at that point, I think they're gonna liquidate. I don't know that. We talked about this yesterday and was pretty excited. And now today, this morning, I found out that information. So also, I'm not sure now, you know, we might go ahead and pursue this just to see if it works, if it can happen. And also, the building owner has contacted us. He's willing to cut the rent by a third. And he wants to be involved in our letter that we send. And then I was gonna talk to the supervisors possibly Monday to see if they're willing to.
Who pays the property taxes, the owner or
Shopko pays the property.
It's a triple net lease. Shopko pays for insurance, the rent, and the taxes. The understanding here is there's about 340 stores in the entire Shopko chain. About a third of them have already received a notice for which our Shopko is one of those. As the mayor indicated, another third of that 340 approximately has been notified, or they put the notice out today. So 2/3 of the chain has now been notified that they're closing down. And as the mayor also indicated, the last third is where they have higher market base capabilities, are the ones that apparently are being packaged for sale. So 2/3 of Shopko is more than likely going to be eliminated.
I had also read something somewhere that it also had to do with which ones were closing, it had to do with their distribution
Well,
network.
our
You're not
store,
gonna keep one out here alone.
they base their stores in tiers. They had tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. Our store was tier 4. Tier 1s was stores they was gonna close. Tier 2 was stores they was probably gonna close, but with some incentive a little bit, they might stay open. Tier 3 stores was right there on the edge. Yes, if we could get enough incentive, we would leave them open. And then tier 4, which never got that far before they actually filed bankruptcy, so they don't know we don't know what was gonna keep them open or closed. So I haven't got I've tried to get the information, I haven't got it as to whether or not there was 12 or 13 stores that did petitions, tax incentives, rent reduction, that they left open, that they were gonna close, that were either tier 2 or tier 3 stores. I haven't got the information as to whether any of them ones that filed the petition and got that information and they kept them open, if any of them was the ones that they were gonna close. So like 2 weeks later, they're closing them anyhow. I haven't got that information. So I guess, to me, I guess I don't know that it's gonna hurt anything to move forward. I don't know that it's gonna help anything to move forward. The only thing is if we reach out to them and, you know, I don't know if they sell or do whatever and somebody happens to stumble across the paperwork and sees that we were interested in helping, they could possibly look at that paperwork and say, hey, if we could get this deal, maybe we would put something there. So I think at this point, I don't have enough information to not move forward, but it's not as hopeful as what I had yesterday.
I think what Chris is pointing out though is probably the understanding of what it might take for us to actually entice some new development or redevelopment of that building. Yeah, it is commercial, but the fact is that we may very well have to incentivize along these lines to begin with.
Is there a length of abatement to this?
So we've tossed out some ideas on terms, but you know, I guess what I would look for in this case is the authorization to give some negotiation parameters, you know, say, hey, the council's not interested in anything more than 5 years or 10 years, and understand that the mayor and the city administrator would figure out how to come up with that.
I think how this will work, Darren, is that we're establishing a relationship with the property owner who is a farmer in Oregon. But the fact is that through the mayor, actually, there's a relationship that's evolving and it seems to be reasonably positive. And my speculation is if the Shopco thing falls through, we're going to be working a lot with him in trying to entice a new placement in there. Obviously, they will. My speculation is that he will either sell the property to somebody else, or he will employ some sort of realtor that does this kind of work, and that we will probably be working with some agent of that owner to see what we can do as far as an enticement is concerned. That's typically how these things work when you're trying to bring in a new client, new tenant.
So the duration of your abatement is to be determined and.
Yeah, I think it's too early. I think it's too early to tell. I mean,
Their commitment.
I guess a suggestion to me was I would probably not make it any longer than 3 years.
Well, I was thinking something like a 5-year with a guarantee to stay 5 more, and if you don't, then you repay.
Here's the
that's a hard
problem,
thing with retail.
but the
Well,
problem
no,
is,
but you'd have to make up the taxes that you didn't
but
pay for.
we don't have any negotiation. They're not gonna call us, they're not gonna talk to us. All we're trying to do as city and the citizens in the county is throw it, and the building owner is throw a proposal at them and hoping they'll take it. Because there's guidelines really that have been sent out as far as basically kind of how to go about this. And with the other stores, we've looked up a couple other stores and kind of seen what they've done to keep theirs. And it's basically, they got together, they come up with a plan, they sent it to them. Not all of them's got it, and some of them have. So it's a shot in the dark. You're just drawing back and letting it fly. You know, you either hit or you don't.
I think if we get into the situation where we're going to deal with a new tenant of the building, negotiations will probably get a little bit more formal as opposed to taking a shot in the dark, because realistically, they would probably come to us and ask for incentive for which we would then try to provide. Understand that Shopko is not asking us.
Right.
Your plan would be, what you're talking about would be something you would deal with in new stores.
Understand though, you're also opening up a hornet's nest for current businesses, saying, why are you giving them a tax break and not me?
So we can talk about
all
the
kinds
revenue.
of hornet nests around here.
We could talk about the revenue that they generate and the impact that they have on not just our government, but also anybody else that's using LOST. And realistically, this is a big player in our community. There's no question about that. I speculate that the value of this property might be one of the top 10 in the city, as far as property taxes are concerned. So I think, I think the real issue here is recognize that while we have a long shot on this thing, the takeaway on this is that we might have to get a lot more creative and a lot more deliberate in negotiating somebody else to place in there.
We thought this was something for short term to try to, if the numbers we ran, it's cheaper to do this to keep what we got for 3 years than it is to try to bring somebody in new, because you're probably gonna have to incentivize them a little bit more for a longer period of time. Just like I said, it's a shot in the dark. It's just something that we felt was the most we could give and do to try to keep what we had.
And you're still gonna find out whether in fact there's even a shot to take, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know if there's one to take, but I'm still gonna talk to the supervisors on Monday to see, if they'll help. I mean, I'm hoping they do. I hope, that's kind of why I want a little bit of direction tonight, so that I could kind of take something to them and say, this is what we're doing, and hopefully they'll try to match or come close to what they can, with the understanding that,
Well, like I said, it's a whole lot easier to try to save what we've got than get somebody new. And I think what you got, the plan you guys have talked about, move forward with it.
so just, municipal taxes no longer than 3 years. Is that what everybody kind of thinks will work?
Place to start.
Can I suggest that that's kind of what we're thinking, but if something else comes up here, give us the latitude to do it.
Yes.
I mean, understand that, again, we're talking a long shot, but simultaneously, if we're going to negotiate somebody coming in here.
Well, they need an urban, I mean, then they go through the process that everybody else does, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
So,
And it's Shopko, this deal is Shopko specific.
right.
If they go, this whole deal goes, and if somebody else comes in, we start over new.
That's right.
Motion to that effect.
We can't get a motion, but we can,
We're letting you know what's going
we're
on.
letting you know what's going on, and, if there was more negative than positive, then we would drop it, but we'll move forward with what we got. Approve a resolution authorizing the city administrator, city clerk to make the appropriate inter-fund transfer of sums and record the same in an appropriate manner for fiscal year 2019 for the city of Bloomfield, Iowa.
Okay, this is, this item is being specifically placed on the agenda because it's a lead into the budget discussions. And in fact, you look at these two sets of charts that are on your table. What you're going to be talking about is fund balances in the first action, fund balances in 2019, that's the top one. That's revision 5. And the second one, which is what we'll be talking about in the budget, which is the next agenda item, is a very similar document. We have been going through reconciliations of bank accounts. I shouldn't say we, it's mostly Brenda's work here. She's been working with Data Tech, who manages Summit, our accounting software. This has been, getting this sheet right here has been an incredible labor. To give you understanding here, these numbers here to date have been rather fluid. If you recall the USDA number that we had for the water tower showed that we had a $504,000 surplus, but there was two other water projects from 2014 that had negative balances. Turns out that none of those numbers are really solid. And in fact, we're clearing out these accounts, and after reconciliation of the bank accounts, the $504,000 number actually was 394, Brenda, 392?
300 something.
Yeah, 390. So we had less there. And the reason why this is going on is that we as a city have been looking at some things that haven't been reconciled for a long, long time. And we're trying to get a budget baseline from which I don't know whether we've had for a long, long time. But the transfers that you see here in the fund balances for 19 actually is pretty accurate data now for the first time in years. And what this does is it actually shows where we have now cleared out a lot of accounts, and we're going to start seeing these things just fall out of our budget line items here in the next year or so. And we have restored money that we've had negative balances in, with a couple exceptions, and we'll speak to that. And we've adjusted how we've done some transfers. We've reversed two transfers that we did in December, due in part to having a different, I made one was a mistake that I thought we had to transfer money into the general fund and transfer the debt service. And we actually had done that, but not for the year before, and it, don't get me started. But the point being here is that what we have done now is effectively clean our accounting house. And I think probably the thing to do is just look at this sheet and focus first of all on the general fund. See that we had 2019 transfers in that total about 400,000 and transfers out of 252 that was correcting entries. And you can see that the year-end fund balance, projected fund balance, is $2,800. And that number is not going to be as solid as you think, because if we have unexpended funds in the general fund, which we more than likely will have, then at the end of this year, those monies will effectively accumulate into the general fund, and that number will go up. In fact, I expect that number will go up. Now, will it go up by hundreds of thousands of dollars? No. Will it go up by tens of thousands of dollars? Maybe 10 or 20. But we're not talking about a big fallout here. The road use tax is an interesting one, and we'll talk about that some when we talk about budget in the next agenda item. We have a lot of money that's been stacked up in RUT, and it's a good number to have from the standpoint of paying for other capital improvements. You can see that the end of year fund balance of 326,000 is actually a pretty solid number. We feel pretty confident about that. RUT is going to be used for street projects that we will have in this particular upcoming year related to the CDBG. Now, if we know that we got about $1.3 million in CDBG and city match funds for the water and sewer projects. But if we're going to repair streets, i.e. the one that we always talking about here is East Street, going from Franklin down to South Street, we can do half of it with the grant, assumedly, plus our match funds. But the other half, we don't have true funding for, and that's where you would get that money. So there will be a transfer assumedly made when we have a better understanding as far as the cost is concerned for doing that kind of project. Employee benefits, we've been carrying a positive balance there. That's money that is actually property taxed. Those expenditures are property taxed very specifically in our budget for IPERS and health insurance and workers' comp now. So those kinds of things are kind of standalone. You can take money out of it, but you can only borrow. That money has to be earmarked really for those purposes. Emergency fund taxes, this is a new one. Remember last year, while we lowered the property taxes by 74 cents, we actually, in that net of reduction, we added 27 cents back for emergency government. And that amount of money is going to yield us probably about $20,500. And we've received half of it because we received about half of the property taxes already, and we expect to receive the other half when we receive the March disbursement of property taxes. So that money, while it shows up there, we transfer it every year. We'll be transferring it every year to the general fund to offset ostensibly fire and police type services.
That 27 cents have to be done through public vote.
Yeah, it's done by your budget, just like you do
No,
the
don't
810.
have to be done through ballot form
No.
during the election?
No.
What's that one?
What's what one?
There is one that you have to do through public election.
If you have a debt service cost, for instance, that is
But I thought that,
beyond, I shouldn't say debt service, you wanted to do local option sales tax, that's one.
I
But
thought
that's
that,
local option sales tax,
I
you're
thought
talking about
that
property
emergency,
taxes.
I thought the emergency fund one had to be done through, because I thought they talked about putting it on the ballot when we had the city official election there.
I'm not aware of it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no.
Because I
I know
noticed
that-
that, I noticed we just put it in last year, and I thought that was one that needed to be done through election, that's why I was asking.
Which I think the one you're thinking of was for the library.
But I
Yeah.
thought it was in that 27 cents.
No.
The library was talking about putting one on the ballot and then didn't, what was it?
It was just to bring in taxes to support their operations.
But I thought it was that emergency tax thing. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I just curious, I guess.
Yeah, no, about 2 out of 3 cities in this state use this 27-cent tax. When I was in Clinton, it was just a matter of course that was put in. Council, I think, after a while, took it out too for a while, but it's something that you just approve through the budget process. Local option sales tax, you can see that there is a year-end projected balance of $312,000. That number is going to be lowered when we talk about the budget next week in its final form by $20,000 to $25,000. Chris and I are going to have to just debate on whether it's 20 or 25,000, but we're going to have to lower it because of Shopko. That's bad news, but it's not that bad news, because what we need out of LOST is money to offset the construction work related to the 2014 bond issue, which is costing us about $235,000 a year. Revenues were projected before Shopko of this coming in at about 310,000. So we'll lower it to about 285,000. Actually, I think we had it estimated even higher than that. But we will lower it by about 25,000 with the understanding that we still will have more than enough to cover our debt service. Now, that is another source of funding that we can use. We have to use it on streets. That's what LOST is for. We're using most of it, obviously, for a debt service. But we have one more year. We have the plan for us to go every 10 years with a bond issue has 1 year sticking out at the end of the 2014 bond issue. And and that is to be paid off. The last payment is in 2025. So we're looking to bank money in that account to pay for that last 235,000. And as you can see right now, we already have that. So there still will be some money available, and understand likewise that we still got 5 more years of collection above the 235. So I think that ultimately over the next 3 or 4 years, you probably see that this account having $250,000 of money that can be spent on street improvements and take care of that one last year of debt service. Hotel motel is one that we haven't been making, we've been making approvals. We've been making approvals of distribution of funds, but we haven't actually internally made those transfers, and we're playing catch up there. You can see that the hotel motel tax, we're transferring $25,000 to the pool deck. We had it budgeted, we've never even shown that commitment's being made. We're transferring, we're transferring $48,894 to the DC Trail project, which you can see later on in this page has still got a $40,000 shortfall. We made a commitment to add another $80,000 of funding to that project, and we never made that, and we're making a partial now. And then finally, in hotel motel, there's a transfer of some of the money that's going to be generated for the basketball court for this year. And that'll be another portion of the cost that we would use for the basketball courts and its reconstruction for next year to add to the balance. I think another one to point out here when you get further on down, while it's not a transfer, we're actually showing as a revenue in Fund 318. This is the street improvement program. We don't have that revenue yet, $2 million, but that $2 million will come at the end of March, so that will show up here. Transfers have been made to close out some of these streetscape accounts, close out some of these other smaller balances that were in some of the debt accounts that we had for projects. You can see that one of the red areas here is CBDG energy efficiency. It's negative $1,392. That one, we expect to get more revenues.
We have a grant to cover that.
Grant revenues to cover that, so it will go positive.
Should that 2 million in streets, where's the 45,000?
45,000 we will keep in the debt service because that is placement cost. So we get to DC Trails and you see that there's $40,000 there. There's 3 things going on here. One is we are still trying to figure out exactly what we need to do to close out the CAT grant. There's money that the library has that we think perhaps should actually come over to this account. DC Trails, the organization owes us $10,000. So we haven't got that yet. And of course, there's still some monies left that perhaps we're going to have to put in there. But we know right now that there's some money in hotel motel to cover some of this. We're still trying to figure this one out. This is the only one that's really a question mark for us as far as working with now other agencies to get the money in. You can see the East Street Bridge project has transfers into it. We've got in from run, out from lost. We shifted the money around to still keep that thing fully funded. I don't think there's anything, I'm trying to think if there's anything else here. Probably draw your attention to some of our accounts related to our enterprises. You can see, for instance, in 600, water, the year-end projected balance is going to be about $550,000. And that includes a transfer out of 315 that is going to the CBDG 2018 project. So there's, while we pulling out a big number, there still is a very healthy balance in water. Go down to sewer, 610, you can see the same thing. There's about another 550,000 in there. This account is going to change dramatically. We're going to have to make a budget amendment later this year. I don't know whether it'll be in this fiscal year or the next fiscal year, but we'll make a major budget amendment to jack the money up really high to do the sewage treatment plant. But that will be reflected in this transfer account. Then you see the sewer plant upgrade. We got $147,508 that we already spent there. The SRF grant that we're going for will help offset that. That's scheduled for a public hearing and council approval 2 weeks from now, as far as the application is concerned. We know that one way or the other, the sewer plant upgrade, the 611 account is where you're going to see a lot of money coming in likewise to offset that cost. Now, going back up to the sewer plant itself, will we be taking money out of that to help offset? Depends on how much you want to do and how close you want to cut that level down as far as the plant upgrade is concerned. I've always been hopeful that we could do some of that, but it kind of remains to be seen. You can see, for instance, going to electric in 630 that there's an ended year, a projected end year balance of $2,234,000. I think that number will go up by a couple $100,000 at the end of this year. Because if you look at budgeted expenses not yet spent, there's $1,555,000 there. That includes a big chunk of transfers that were supposed to be made to the general fund this year that we actually did not make and we don't expect to make. And the reason for that is that we closed out some other accounts in the general fund, and instead of putting them into the electric utility to bring them back to the general fund, this all in a sense is a way that we are just cutting out the middleman. So I think that we'll truly be around 2.5 million on that balance. Understand that when we come to the next budget for 20, that there will be a major draw out of that fund to support the general fund. But we will still be in a positive manner as far as income versus expenses. And we will still be making money even with transfers in the upcoming year. The energy efficiency department is being more formally put together here. You can see that it's got a positive balance of 34,000 expected. Gas, you can see we're at 343.
Let's back up to Vista projects.
Okay. That's one we're about done with, Chris.
So that's Gage and Warren, and so we budget just a little bit of money.
I thought all that was grant funded.
All of their time is grant funded. That's just money that if we do like the computer, right? Or if we send them for some training, then that's our cost. The federal government pays for their time. So that's why you see just a little bit in there.
Next year, this project will close down, right? After fiscal year 20.
That's no, I'm thinking we'll close down in August or September
Fiscal year 20.
of fiscal.
Calendar year 19.
Yes.
But fiscal year 20, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the chances are you're not even gonna see much of this, anything on next year's budget. Anything else that trips your trigger here?
I'll let you do it.
Okay. You can see that there's a lot of zeros here, which indicates that we're closing out a lot of accounts that have been on the books and have been stale for a long time. And we've already done some of this with the December transfer.
Will they be gone next year? I mean, will they not even be on the sheet so we don't have to muddle through
Yeah, that's the goal. That is absolutely the goal. All these zeros, a lot of this was action that we took this year, either in December or now. But that's the whole idea. At any rate, those are the transfers. And you can see under the transfer notes that there's a far more complete list than what we had before. And really, this is as much effort that we have done simultaneously with budgeting. And again, I can't stress enough how much work that Brennan's been doing on this. This is
the School Support Foundation. Have we done anything for them in the past?
I think that was, I believe, this has been a while ago, but I think there was a need for somebody to park some money until they got the school foundation set up. So they've established a new foundation. They just needed a place to park it temporarily until they formally set that foundation.
So you're looking for an approval for the resolution to authorize the city administrator clerk to make the transfer, right? That's correct. And this will effectively set the floor for the budget that we're gonna be doing next. I make that motion.
Second.
Darren,
Yeah.
Scott,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Earl.
Yes.
Okay, before we go to the next big sheet, I wanna talk.
One question.
Okay.
What we just approved was transfers we need to make like in the next couple weeks,
Within this fiscal year, yeah.
the
Tomorrow.
fiscal year that we're in.
Right.
This sheet is transfers that you're looking at for 2020 budget.
Yeah, that's not that.
This isn't what,
That's right. That's right.
and a lot of these are just kind of swapping some things back that we did before and taking it, moving it different.
A lot of that is, yes. Cleaning things up.
We get talking about so many years at once, I get.
It's confusing for us too. Before we talk about the next sheet, I want to talk about this budget worksheet. It starts road use tax, street department. The only other major thing that we have going on in the budget that we haven't talked about yet is RUT. And the reason for that is that RUT is now integrating itself into the general fund as far as some of the expenditures are concerned, and doing it on a larger basis than what we have done in the past. First thing to understand here is when you see road use tax fund in that very first page, line item 110, 210, 4430, state road use taxes. This is what we get from the state. We're projecting an income of $336,500. We had a budget of 307 this year, but we're running at a much hotter rate than that. You can see that in fiscal year 18, we actually did expenditures of 336. So we're looking at this number as what we expect to get from the state. And that's the number that we kind of distribute throughout this budget. So how are we spending this? First of all, in the street department, we have salaries of $85,363. And the reason why we picked that number is that we're going to spend every dollar of the $336,500. If you look at the next page where you see general fund street department, you see a total in the fiscal year 20 budget of $40,144. If you add those two numbers together, that would be the salaries that we would have in the street department. And heretofore, it would all have been shown up in the general fund as opposed to some of it in the road use tax. We used to pay salaries out of the road use tax. We stopped doing it, and now we're proposing that we go back to doing it. And all this is we're spending what we can on salaries. There won't be anything else whatever we can't spend on the other things, will come out of the general fund, and that's what it shows here on the second page. But going back to the other things under the street department, the road use tax on the front page, these are things that we've been paying for all along. And you can see that all of these numbers total to $336,500. And there is no money here that is, except for $30,000 of capital equipment, that is going for capital equipment and improvement. The capital equipment is a used truck. There's also another, what do we have, 10,000, Danny, in it for the plow blade under the equipment repair and maintenance or minor.
We got 40,000 in minor equipment. That's not really that minor, is it?
Part of
Well, it's the equipment you're buying is minor, so it's not like a tamper for a couple grand, that kind of stuff's all minor equipment.
So you're buying $40,000 worth of attachments?
Well, not just that.
That's what you said.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the purchases will be minor, but we're not buying a big,
Lot of it.
that for here is a lot.
Has that got that backhoe ran in there too?
Yes, actually, that's under the lease, right? That's under 6415.
That's the lease one, yeah. But the point being is that we're not looking to buy a new truck. We're trying to buy a reasonably decent used truck as a replacement. Otherwise, we're not going to be spending money out of this account other than the fund balance, which is where we have that 326. And that's where we would be spending improvement money for streets, for instance. In the transfers, you can see that we made transfers back and forth here, and we actually talked about the transfers in the 2019 thing that you just approved. So the year-to-date is actually going to change here. So when you get right down to it, road use tax is going to be spent completely on operations and equipment. We're still going to spend another $40,000 out of the general fund to run the street department. And if you look at, if you look at the bottom of the street department here, the second page, you start to see the salaries in that are related to the street department itself. Again, a reflection of what we were talking about on the first page. So any comments about that?
Because the bottom half of the second page and the top half of the third page is really the first page, is that right?
Yeah,
Just for ease of us reading it,
yeah, we tried to do it that way, yeah.
This 40,000 is salaries for the street department paid out of the general fund.
Right, that's the big shift, right?
That's
Because you're
the big
moving
shift.
salaries from general fund to road use tax. That's the big thing.
That's the big difference, the $83,000. And again, that's something that we used to do, we stopped doing it, and we're proposing that we do it again. Because that's how we take the costs out of the general fund.
how come you expect the bigger projection in road use tax? Is there, what drives that?
If you look at the year-to-date, the 215, 429.
Are you looking about for some carryover, is that what?
Divide that by 7 and multiply it by 12, it comes out to 369. So what we're actually thinking is it's not gonna be that high, but we're looking at this to come in at about where we were in 2018. I think we under budgeted this past year. in here, for instance, one comment is, we got, is it $75,000 for street patching and all of that?
Yeah, well, yeah, between miscellaneous contract and that 87 for that stuff.
So
Really
really,
spend that on North Street before we.
No, that'll probably be a lot of filling, chip seal.
chip sealing.
And resealing, some stuff they're done, you gotta come back and reseal them.
I think the quicker we get North Street, the better.
Yeah, that stuff will all come out of the, CIP money.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I
this
know
money's just
you're gonna have
operations.
some money in getting it to the, till we do the CIP part.
Well, hopefully, as soon as we release, yeah, so we'll get going. Yes, when we have money then.
You're gonna have to bring a little country to the city.
We're gonna, well, we're gonna do some, milling down there, probably about February 21st, when it warms up to 40. We'll mill that and probably bring in some, IUP from Norris, get that back on, so. Do a little more than that, get us until we do the pavement.
Any other questions about streets?
The Winter Street supply numbers down 15,000 from last year. Budget, is there a reason? Are we not spending that much or?
Look at fiscal year 16, fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18 expenditures, 14,000, 2,000, 9,000. We budgeted 20. We might come in high there, we might have to break that budget, but if you look at the trends over a longer period of time, 15 seems to be the right number. Again,
Well, I wouldn't mind buying a little more of that kind of stuff. It seems like we're a little skimpy here the last couple of days on salt and
this
stuff.
is a tough seasonal thing, and we actually are buying some. I just approved KISS flow to buy
But
some
we
more.
have plenty coming, yeah. But our goal with this is buy more in the summer at the better rate, at the price, and stop, fill that hoop building before we get into there, so.
And again, if we have to overrun this line item, that's not gonna stop us from making these purchases. I mean, the point here is we gotta buy what we need. That $15,000 is an anticipation of what we would normally expect in a typical year. Hard to say that right now, and we're in the middle of a big icy stretch, but.
Let's see. Anybody got any questions about the budget worksheet? We went over both of these?
We're gonna go to that next.
So we have another one to go over?
Yeah, this will be for this.
Is everybody good with this sheet to move to the next sheet? Alright.
Make sure I got this. First of all, before I go through this, you do have this sheet here that talks about where the transfers are for 2020. And to summarize in that sheet, how we're balancing the general fund is obviously, as we've done before, is take money from the utilities to offset our costs in the general fund. Last year, I think we were projected to do $827,000. We were budgeting that way to do it. We've at least showed budget runs that we're going that way. This year, you can see that we're at 720,000, actually, that 720,500. That's actually a little bit of a misnomer. That 20,500 should normally just be considered a general fund revenue, although we have to receive it in the emergency government fund and then transfer it. Realistically, the big numbers is 125 out of water, 75 out of sewer, and 500 out of electric. I think that we never want to pass the $500,000 mark in electric. The reason for that is that we still need to make money in there. We also know that we have a hefty balance in there and we don't want to pull it down. With this $500,000 transfer, we will still be making about $100,000 in the electric utility.
Bumping that up.
Bumping up the fund balance by $100,000. So the income that we're earning here inclusive of the $500,000 transfer, will outstrip our costs in the electric utility. I think one thing to understand here, though, is that we probably are going to be faced in the next few years meaning 2 or 3 years, of doing some major capital improvement. And the expectation there is that we're going to probably need to do some borrowing, revenue bond borrowing for that. But we would like to do it in the context of fitting it into the revenue structure that we have right now. But there might be a time where we're going to have to actually take a look at raising the electric rate. Now understand that we took a pass on raising the electric rate for about $30,000 this past year. I think that what we would be looking at for a bond issue, that hopefully the improvements that we could bond for would last for would last for 20 years, and therefore the bonding would be capable. The bonding commitment that we make would be for 20 years. If we did about $2 million of revenue bonds, that would probably translate into a debt service cost of probably closer to $300,000 because it's revenue bond. The costs of revenue bonds are more. So we might have to find a way to generate that kind of money in the future. Or recognize that we can buy down some of our fund balance, the $2.5 million fund balance. That's a balancing question that you all are going to have to understand, not necessarily in this upcoming fiscal year, but probably the fiscal year after that, or the fiscal year, 2 fiscal years after this.
Electric rate increase that was proposed was gonna raise electric revenues by 86,000.
Then we turned it, then we
never changed it, we just did away with it because we was gonna get the refund.
Yeah, we were gonna get the refund
50
in
some,
50 and then just cut it to what was left.
but we wasn't gonna, we never proposed lowering it just to cover the 36.
At any rate, it was 2014 when you last raised electric rate. And there's been 5 from SIEC since then. Whether we're talking about it 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that could be, 8 or 9 years since you raised electric rate. You can say the thing about water and sewer, but we know what's going to happen with sewer. We're going to raise that one big. At any rate, it's the cost of doing business. And one of the larger questions here is do you want to carry, and this is not a question that has to be answered tonight or even in this fiscal year, do you want to carry effectively 1 year of operating costs in reserve in electric utility? It's a lot of money. The other cost that you see here is that there's an LOST transfer to debt service. That's something that we do every year, or should be doing every year. We didn't do it 2 years ago, or last year, I should say. There's some TIF transfers here for 2 new projects. One is Courthouse Square lighting. The other is the new housing initiative, the $150,000 that we're looking to use to try and incentivize new construction. That assumes that up to $25,000 a house that we would incentivize, times obviously 6 houses. If we get 6 new houses.
15 times 10.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about the county's portion.
Yeah. We better
15 times.
We better clarify that before
Yes.
somebody
Yeah,
comes in.
you're right.
I was starting to go, wait a minute.
I was thinking the county's,
more.
I was thinking the county's portion.
Yeah, no, that's.
No, it's 15 times 10. Now, we're not gonna get 10 houses built here, but at least that's an account that we will establish. And if in fact we don't spend the money, it's not like the money's gonna go away, it's just gonna be there. If we're successful, then we gotta pull more money into it. But the TIF account that we're pulling this out of started out with $733,000. Some of that money, $140,000 of that TIF money went into the general fund on the transfer you just did. So realistically, we're starting out at just under $600,000 to pull money into here. These 2 initiatives lower it by $375,000. So there's still more TIF money that we have that can be allocated toward other kinds of projects.
Did we under budget a lot for the general fund last year that we're putting all this money in there?
Yeah, wanted to talk about that. I just wanted to kind of bring up that transfer of 500,000. This is kind of what the city's always done. Everybody's always kind of got that misnomer out there saying the electric funds the city. I mean, that's kind of what Bloomfield's always done. Well, yes and no, but.
It's true, but
Yes,
it's only because of the way it's.
Right, and our goal is, we're always trying to increase the revenues and the franchises, which we can usually in that kind of stuff, hopefully not through rate increases, but just through, reducing costs of operation, we can increase revenues. But the biggest thing is what's been happening in the general fund, people they've been decreasing their revenue projections, like the mayor is saying. So, with the PD, the FD, the airport and all of them, you start looking at their projection of revenues keep decreasing. So as they keep decreasing their projected revenues, we have to increase that and recover.
Well,
So,
I'm going to differ with you a little on this, Dean.
Right.
I think that,
Because
I want, because I was going to address this when we get
Right.
to the big sheet. I think
yeah,
the thing to understand here is that we have always been running this kind of a transfer. This is the only difference in this past year is that the transfers come from different sources that we're closing out. But the point that I think is, and I wanted to talk about this once I got through this list, is that we need to look at new revenue sources. We need to increase revenue sources, and we need to start looking at efficiencies related to the services that we provide. Now, we could actually have that number lower if you look at it in the context of the new initiatives that we haven't done, or we're doing now that we hadn't done in the past. And I think that that's why this number continues to be up there. But we have been running, well, I can't put it on this one, but we have been running these kinds of transfers in the general fund for a long time. And it's how this city has run its business. I think we're probably more clearly establishing it now from the standpoint of how we have done it in the past, and we're documenting it a little more clearly now. But the fact is that we've been doing $500,000 of transfers from just the electric utility, more or less, for the last 5 or 6 years. Earl's shaking his head, John's shaking his head. Yeah, we've been doing that. And that's how we've been running the city. Now, we also have been taking transfers from other utilities in the past, and we're actually showing that this year in water and sewer. Obviously not to the same degree, because they're not as much of an income generator.
But next year, we're moving 500, 600, 720,000 just to the general fund from the utilities.
Right. That's right, and that's
We
what,
usually only did 480.
no, that was just from the electric utility. We did other transfers too.
I think our expenses are going up without the revenues going up. It looks to me like.
Well, I think that that's part of it. One of the goals.
Maybe we need to start saving some money somewhere instead of just.
Well, maybe I think what we're looking at internally for us is that we think that there needs to be not only cuts, but also revenue enhancers, because when we
We can't
talk,
keep raising all our utilities just to.
No, I'm not
fund
talking
something
about
that we want.
I'm not talking
do it
about utility
otherwise.
costs though, Mayor. I'm not talking about utility costs. I'm talking about general fund costs. I mean, are we going to get more assertive into building inspections and therefore generate fees? Are we going to deal with issues related to costs in recreation? Are we going to look at more fine revenue? None of this is going to be one fell swoop type of income. At the same time, it would be a reasonable expectation for us to try and get, service reductions and service cuts. I mean, those are the things that I think the basis of this budget that we're putting together this year are going to launch us off for the next upcoming fiscal year. This is not going to be easy to do.
One thing I don't know, I didn't know for a long time, and maybe you aren't aware, but on the general fund, the primary revenue stream is property taxes. But that property tax that you can get in is capped by the state. So there's a limit on how much revenue you can bring in through property taxes to pay for these. So that's one of the reasons we have to supplement, right?
Well, I can add to
Well,
that.
I understand
The
the
property-
supplement part, it just seems like we're supplementing a lot more than we have been. And I wanna know why, and
It's,
why is our expenses going up 300,000 a year?
it's not that we're supplementing it more. We've been supplementing it at about the same rate. But to Chris's point about property taxes, our property taxes actually are flat to about, actually reducing a little bit this year because the state also enacted a plan to further reduce property taxation on apartment complexes. We're halfway through a reduction of property tax collections there that will end in 2024, where instead of being taxed at a commercial rate, they will now be at the end of this transition, will be taxed at a residential rate, which is 57%, 57.5% this year. It fluctuates by 0.5% or percentage point every year. But prior to that, it was at 90% of total taxable value. And I think that that's the thing that becomes the real problem here is how do you deal with a shrinking revenue base that's been imposed on us by the state? And that's a problem that all cities are dealing with. And typically how they're dealing with it is that they are looking at other revenue sources. We use LOST for streets. That's how the tax was approved by the voters, was to use it for streets. You could have a referendum to change some of the LOST to make it utilized for operations costs. I don't think that would pass, but the fact of the matter is that there are other communities that use some of their LOST for operations costs. I think that it's reasonable to assume that next year's budget, as far as the general fund is concerned, will probably increase. When I say next year's, I'm talking about fiscal year 21. They'll probably increase around 3% total. It's a conservative number. Hopefully it'll be less. But it would increase our cost by about $50,000 in fiscal year 21, assuming that we do nothing to change cuts or we do nothing to enhance revenue sources. So that's the challenge that we're always going to be having. To be able to articulate that kind of comment in terms that we are understanding now, we couldn't even say that a year ago because our budgeting was so messed up. At any rate, if you go to page 1 where you talk about the transfers here, and you look at the general fund, the projected ending and starting balances, you see that the number right now is $5,809 negative, but that assumes that the 2019 starting or ending transfer budget is correct. You're never going to get this number right at zero because it's always going to be floating around, $5,000 plus or minus. But our cost, as far as the budget is concerned, is offset. We've got it offset to within, I think, $10 of our revenues versus our expenditures. Some of this is going to be based upon other transfer circumstances. But where we're at right now with all of this money is concerned as far as the general fund is going to be as much contingent upon how we end the current fiscal year that we're in. And you can see again a reflection of where these transfers are from. And I point out the $20,500 should just really be considered as property tax revenue that we just had to segregate to put into the general fund. Other than that, if you look at the transfers that we have here, they are to, we're looking to try and spend the money in the courthouse streetlight project and the new housing incentives. We got the transfers from LOST to debt service. And we got the transfers to the TIF funds to do those two projects, the courthouse square and the new housing and net initiatives. Then you got the energy efficiency department fund of 25,000. Those are going to be the monies that we're going to try and do with the line of credit, or not the line of credit, the
User salary.
users. Yeah, the user balance. So when you get right down to it, you have 9 items that really are the centerpiece of what you see for this budget. Recognizing that this is not a true action item, this is how we're going to put together the budget. The budget right now is balanced. The budget, we hope, will be available tomorrow, right?
No.
And we will put it out to you in total, not only in a printed form, but also on the computer. When we come back on a week from tonight, if you so desire, we can make changes then. Once we complete the work on the 14th, then we will go publish the budget. The budget publishing will then fix what we expect to do, and if you make any other changes, it can only be reductions, it cannot be increases. So we're not going to add taxes, realistically, as far as property taxes, and that's pretty much the thing.
Do you mind if I say a couple things about this? If you guys want to, I want to point out a couple things on this sheet.
This number here better match this number here.
Are you guys, I want to show you a couple things on this sheet. So we have several different funds. We talked about the general fund, right? You go down here. This is something you haven't seen in the past. It lists every fund, shows your income, and your outcome, your income and expenses, and your fund balances, right? Segregated by each fund, which is something you haven't had in front of you. So take a good look at it, because it tells you where your electric's doing, how your water's doing, so on and so forth. When you get down to the bottom line on the last page, you're gonna see that there's $15 million in revenue and $11 million roughly there's almost 16 million in revenue and 11.5 in expenses. And you might think, wow, that's awesome. But understand that part of that is anticipating state revolving fund dollars that are going to go through sewer project that we're not going to spend all next year, and some other things, right? So by that, it's going to come down to, it's going to be closer. Our income is not truly that much higher than our expenses, right?
So why don't this reflect that?
Because we may have a note for the entire sewer project next year, but we won't have all of our expenses next year. So we'll have, just like we're doing for the street project, now we're gonna have money received in this fiscal year, but we'll spend it in next fiscal year, so you're gonna carry a fund balance.
So the 6.5 million for the sewer plant upgrade is really what's causing that?
Right.
So if you take that out,
So some of those,
we're only showing an income of 9 million and expenses of 11.5.
right,
Except you wouldn't have all those expenses either.
Well, there's no expenses coming out of that portion.
no, but there is $2 million coming out of your out of the road money that you borrowed, that you're borrowing this year and spending, we're projecting next year.
So the 2 million for the 2020 street improvement
We're actually receiving this year.
is gonna be received in
Right, it's gonna be a revenue in this year,
19.
but an expense next year.
Well, I know, but if you look at 19's revenues, if we don't have that 2 million, that makes that 4 million in revenues and 580 in expenses. But that to me is not balanced. That's about a $2 million loss over revenues.
I'm not following you.
Well, if you don't take out the money, if you take the 2 million out from that we're getting from streets, 4 streets, that makes your budgeted revenues 4,560,000. And since none of them expenses are in 19, you still have 5.8 million in expenses.
No, yeah.
I'm on the 19 sheet.
Okay, yeah, so these expenses and revenues are not a complete year. This is what we anticipate for the rest of the year, right? So don't look at that. These are just to help us project where we're gonna have our fund balances. They're not complete
Well, that
year,
don't give us anything to compare to.
and it wasn't the intent.
Well, I want that attention.
Okay, we can get you that, but I'm just saying that wasn't what these
That's
were
not-
about.
We can't even compare last year's to this year's if we don't have that information.
The budget sheets that you're going to get will have that kind of documentation.
But we're not gonna approve it the same night we get them.
No, in fact, you're gonna get them and
We're not gonna have
The
no
final-
time to look at them and.
the final, you're gonna get a document that actually will be the budget document, assumedly tomorrow. And you're not scheduled to actually approve this budget until March the 7th.
Could you go through the publishing process? So next week they could make changes next week.
They can make them up or down next week. But after that, we can only go down.
Did you guys all hear that? Dan? You can go up or down with changes next week, but after that, you can only go down.
You can cut.
Who says?
State law.
Only if it's been approved.
We have to publish a budget.
I'm just saying, we can go up and down with it as long as we want to until we approve it.
When do we have to have it approved?
My understanding about that, Mayor, is that the publication sets this. I have to ask Sandy or Gail.
But we need to be satisfied with it before it's published so that we don't get that right taken away from us.
If we publish the budget, not that it's approved, but if we publish the budget, can it be raised or lowered? I know that once we publish it, it can only be lowered, isn't it?
Meaning once it's approved and published, or?
Not published before it's approved.
Raised and lowered, you mean as in the total number of budget, we can still raise and lower in fund in different categories?
Raise revenues and lower revenues, raise expenses and lower expenses. You can do that.
But once we publish it, the only number that can't change is the bottom number, but we can move stuff around.
I believe that is the case, and also I believe that you can cut, you can't add revenues.
So as long as these numbers at the bottom don't change, we can change any of the numbers in between even after it's published. We just can't change the total number. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Because if we want to take something out of one and move it to another to raise that one, we can do that.
A lot of this is also indexed off of the property taxes. Once it's published, you can't raise property taxes beyond the publication. It's only can be lowered.
And just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend.
Absolutely. You all approve everything on a continual basis. You got claims accounts tonight. Some of these capital improvements are set asides. There's not necessarily a commitment to doing those capital improvements other than the fact that we have a budget that would allow you to do them. If you wanted to engage in another capital improvement that is not budgeted, as an example, you would have to do a budget amendment. That budget amendment requires the same publication process as approval of this budget. And that budget amendment process would then assumedly have a revenue source attached to it also. We are going to do that this year. We're going to do that as it relates to the sewage treatment plant, because that is a huge number. We still have to do the engineering work on it to get a better handle on it. But in working on that project, it also will get us into a position where we're gonna get the SRF loan set up for that revenue source. That will be a major budget amendment. I don't know if there will be other budget amendments. You can do that in the future. It could be for smaller amounts, much smaller amounts. But for the sewage treatment plant, it will be an amendment.
Anybody got anything, other questions on the budget? Claims. Approved claims as presented. All the motion sensors that were purchased for down in the shop. $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 worth. Can you tell me how many years that's gonna pay back in, other than just turning on the switch?
No.
You won't live long enough. I'm thinking some of this stuff's a little bit unnecessary. You're not saving enough money doing that you can even justify that expense. That to me is a want, not a need. I don't think we needed it. I'm not even sure we needed to replace all the lighting down there. You're not gonna hear on all these motion sensors that they put in. Half of them don't even work unless you get within 5 foot of them. To turn the lights off and on. Anybody else got an opinion on that?
Have they already been installed?
Yeah. See, that's what I mean. If we don't approve to buy them, are they gonna take them down? Or call? They give us the option to approve the claims, but it's usually after they've already bought it and installed it or have it, so it's not like you can take it back.
Well,
Is the
Pretty
electric
hard.
meters,
pretty hard to push efficiency if we're not doing it ourselves.
that's really not efficient if it doesn't pay for itself.
These were all part of a recommendation that came from a consultant. So,
You're
From
saying,
several
the
years ago.
motion sensors cost more than they're saving electricity?
You know how long it takes to make up that $1,000 in savings on electricity with the motion sensor? We'll never see it. What's the 2S electric meters, electric department? Is that for the meter change outs?
Correct.
Huh?
Yes, that's the AMI project, 2S meters or the residential meters.
So that's part of that
Correct.
budget
Yeah, that meter purchase was approved.
for the
back in-
AMI project?
Right, that meter purchase was approved back in, let's say June.
I think so.
Yeah, any of those purchases,
I
like,
understand the efficiency thing and that we need to push it if we're gonna push it, but we also are using the taxpayers' money to do what we do. And we need to make sure that the decisions we're making are proper also.
Do you forget who you're talking to?
Huh?
Do you forget who you're talking to?
No, I'm just making a statement.
Okay.
I'm talking to the whole town and everybody in it. And our management.
You forget, you don't run this town, the city council does.
I didn't say I run it, I just was making a statement that I think that's how we should look at things. You didn't make that decision either, to buy the sensors. Motion to approve claims.
We pay claims as written.
Well, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Reports? Gary?
oh, I can pass.
Danny?
Yeah, so on, electric, of course, we ran, and distribution and generation, we ran engines this week, we're still running engines this week, we finish up tomorrow. AMI project, of course, we had, two new guys show up, into last week, they started installing meters this week, so they're out installing electric meters, as this week, of course, with the weather, they're both from Texas, so they're not used to this weather, so they're doing that. With the sewer project also, we're having a public hearing with the HRG engineer. We're doing SRF funding, that kind of stuff. Also, we installed a composite sampler. We're taking a little more samples quite frequently to try to isolate some of our issues. If you notice through the report, February was our highest month where we had our BOD levels and everything that was an issue. So this is the month where we're really trying to sample, narrow down, and isolate the causes. So if we can really narrow this down, we might be able to affect the cost of our sewer plant and bring that down. So that's one thing we're working on. Other than that, I guess one comment I'll make about the lighting and stuff at the shop, just like everything else, if you look at the transfer this money we've spent on electrical, all this kind of stuff we spent, it shows our infrastructure is deteriorated. Same thing with the Columbia shop. It's the same thing with the water plants. Everything else, everything we're using in the city, there's not been much invested back in there. I am making the choice to invest back in the people. Some of this stuff is for the employees, you know, so they're feeling safe, that they're a comfortable environment to work in. And sometimes you don't have to turn off the light to come in. They don't have to remember about shutting it off. It'll off automatically. They can come in, do their job, and they can get out and go
But
home
when you're
safe.
sitting there and the light
So-
goes out and you gotta stand and jump
Yeah.
up and down and turn them back on,
That's
that's
just-
not safe.
That's just a matter of adjustment. We can adjust that. Stuff's gonna happen. You know, we're not totally done with that project. We're still working on that project. So it's just a matter of getting the things right. You know, it's also a matter of one employee not liking it versus another employee like, can't make them all happy. So our goal is to overall try to bring that stuff down. So of course, the value added with some of that is just in the staff. Yeah, we may not get $800. It's worth, just even put new gutters on Columbia shop, costing $3,000. It's better to have $3,000 new gutter than it is to have a $10,000 workers' comp claim because of the ice coming off the gutter and not being there. So some of those decisions, just looking at as management and putting money and investing back into people So just, I know the taxpayers want stuff done, somebody can provide them equipment to do the job. And that's what I'm looking at doing, so that's all I got.
So they were sure proud of the LED lights inside the generator room.
Yeah, well, and those lights, actually, the lighting was promised to them before I got there, because that was part of, if they did the solar field, they would get new lighting in the Columbia shop. So I'm fulfilling a promise, I wouldn't mind, like we're doing like a lot of other things around here, but yeah, it is something that's good. The lighting's better, they can see in there, it's instant on, it's not waiting 20 minutes for a light to get to the level that's in there, and, you know, it's just efficiency plus, you know, safety and employee, you know, morale is a lot better than $800.
You got motion sensors in your house,
Mhm.
and all of, you know, how many light switches at all?
No, not all, but I mean, I have them in some areas.
Anything else?
Nope.
Chris?
Yeah, I want to address that too. Part of what this came from is the city, about 3 years ago, began a process of evaluating every building and seeing where there are opportunities for energy efficiency upgrades. We had a consultant that came in from Franklin Engineering, it was funded through a grant through the state of Iowa, went through every single building, looked at all the options, and said, laid it all out, said, this is how much it's gonna cost, this is how much it's gonna save. I can't tell you, I haven't seen the numbers that, for this lighting project, I can't tell you if those are dead on to what the projections were. But they were the top tier things that we should do because they pay back the soonest and so on and so forth. And we haven't had an opportunity to get all of those things in place, but when we do that, we're doing it based on the recommendations from an engineer saying these are the things that pay back the fastest and are the best investments to make. An example, one of the things that we know we have to do is that one of the things people like in our pool, they like a warm, comfortable pool during the summer, especially early in the morning. We pay a lot of money to heat water in a pool and see it evaporate. One of the things that we can do is put a liquid pool cover on it. It'll cost us $500 and save us about $2,000 a year. We've got this list, we need to work through it. And it's part of our process is to consult with folks, get some recommendations, and implement those plans. I understand we need to be fiscally responsible, I truly do. And I'm not one of the people that's gonna go out there and spend money willy-nilly. On the other hand, we need to be able to have plans that last longer than a few weeks. And that's one of the problems we have right now, is we get started on something and we get derailed. And we get started on something and we get derailed. It costs us money, you wanna be fiscally responsible, it costs us money to get derailed. Now, if you wanna derail us before we get started with the plans. Don't derail us after the plans are done. That's inefficient as well. It happens a lot. That's all I have.
So what's left on the list? So we're.
I'd be happy to go through that with you. I have the list.
Just so,
Right?
if you want to take time, go.
But
sit
here's
down.
something
go through the list.
here's something else.
Sure.
Is there any reason why we're not informed or can't be brought up to speed on this before it happens, or instead of after it happens? Why can't we know that we're buying $5,000 worth of lights and putting motion sensors before we do it? So if we don't think the motion sensors or something is a good idea, we can take that out. We're not saying we don't need LED lights for an upgrade. Maybe we don't need the sensors.
And I think part of that is,
It looks to me like we're doing stuff to go without getting approval because we have that spending limit to do that. I understand that part. But we have to be informed of what's going on. Even if we don't have to approve buying it, we need to know we're buying it before we buy it. That is our job to make. Then we can make a decision if we don't want it at that point.
and I hear you, and I think part of it is us feeling, we're still, I know we're a year into this, right? But it's been a change and it's still feeling out how much the council at what level of detail does the council want to engage?
I think everybody's aware that the newer part of the council wants more than the older part of the council.
That may be, but we still don't know. Do you want to know when we change a light bulb?
I don't, but before we go and change out all the lighting, maybe we maybe some of us have recommendations or have ideas that could be used to save money or do it a different fashion that's cheaper and better.
And you know, I value your input. We go back and forth. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying we're still, it's not intentional to say, what can we get by with? It's still figuring out at what level do you really want to be engaged as a council, right? Because we don't know for sure. And sometimes we take a step and we think it's the right step. And then we get feedback that says, hey, we want more engagement. Okay, we'll get you more engaged. It's not, please understand, it's not a deliberate attempt to slide something through. It's trying to be efficient with your time and make sure that we're bringing things to you that you actually want to talk about. Now we know, we'll be more careful.
A 5-minute discussion after we put the lights up is just as easy as a 5-minute discussion before.
Right, and again, I'm saying our effort is to try to be efficient with your time and know where you want to engage. Do you want to engage at the level of lighting, or do you want to engage at the level of energy efficiency planning and say, here's the plan, go, well, you understand what I'm saying?
But we weren't involved in the energy efficiency planning, so can we not be brought up to speed with that so we know what it is? We've
Right.
never known what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. And so to Scott's point of, hey, what's left on the list? That's a great question. And I recognize that we haven't informed you about that action that happened before you, so we'll get it to you. We'll do that.
Even though decisions were made before we were here, we still get blamed for them now.
Well, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying you, I'm talking about
Sure.
citizens of Bloomfield. Why are we spending money on?
I think we all have the
That.
same
We didn't
reason
do
why
it.
we're here. Some of us may have a different way of going about getting it, but I think in the end, I think we all want the same thing. Some of us probably require more information than the others. And part of that is because we don't have that information that they had before.
And
we
I
got here.
apologize to you for that.
No,
You know?
that's fine. I understand and
But, you know, if you'd have been brought in on it and you said, hey, these things ain't worth having, I wouldn't care if we didn't have them. You know, fine, don't put them up there.
I'm just saying we have a wide variety of people here that know a lot. Probably somebody that knows every portion of the city and how it could be run and help make it better. Why not we're free. Why not use our information? Because about any time it seems like we have some, when you go against it, that's the same question you asked us. We're asking you.
That's fair.
So all I'm asking is a 2-minute, before you do something, you know, let's just talk about it for 2 minutes. If somebody don't have anything or care, we don't care.
That's kind of what this reports thing is about anyway. Right?
It is.
But like you said,
So rather
we're
than
gonna
do
do
it-
it after.
But we're getting everything after we spend the money, not before, like the diesel fuel. That went over their limit to buy it. There's no reason that couldn't have been brought up and pre-approved to buy diesel fuel, like it should have been, and then they could have bought it. I'm not saying it was done bad, but it was done wrong, and it could have been done right, had it been wanted to be done right. Just an example.
Yeah, I don't have anything further. Thanks.
Chief, police chief's gone, fire chief.
Well, the guys have been dealing with weather-related emergencies here and there. Today they had a car slide into an LP tank. Took it out.
The car or the tank?
Took tank out. Once again, we opened up the fire station for weather emergencies. I got called last night. They were expecting a half-inch of ice, so we opened it up. I just left it with dispatch from here till the dandelions pop out. If we get any weather-related emergencies, just call me and we'll just make one-offs, because I don't want to leave anybody stranded without heat or something. Frontline contacted me earlier in the week. Danny, they're 55-foot poles. They've got the hardware all mounted. They're looking for arrangements to come down and pick sites for the storm sirens. When I talked to him, Gary and I think Danny and I talked about the siren at the fire station seems to be a hiccup. It's not, with 3 more sirens coming in, it's not really optimally in the right spot. So Scott's figuring out the cost and putting a new map together that if we would like to relocate that siren, how much it would cost and what would be the most optimum position. So he's gonna look at it, and there'll be no cost to that. And once I explained it to him, it made more sense. I says, now if we didn't have any sirens and we were getting 4, what would be the best spots for them? So we'll have a better understanding.
Are you looking to move that one southwest?
Don't know. He's gonna give me a new map.
It didn't quite fit.
It doesn't quite
Kinda got
fit 4
three
corners.
Coverage, yeah. I remember
One's
looking
kind
at
of in the
that.
middle.
When we only had one, it worked. The 55-foot poles, be prepared, once they're put in the ground, there'd probably be some noise complaints from the citizens. But he said, you're gonna get a flatter trajectory, so it's gonna actually cover more of the city versus less if they're higher. Anything less than 55, you're really gonna get noise complaints because they're gonna be going right into somebody's bedroom window. But no, we got that worked through. Other than that, everything's going pretty good. Like I said, just weather-related emergencies. Guys are continuing training. They've got their heavy hitters in 2 weeks. We've got 4 or 5 classes that they're required to take every year, so they'll be sitting at the fire station getting bored. But gotta have them. Other than that, we're doing good.
Council updates.
We've had more council meetings than other meetings.
Mayor comments. The meeting with HR Green that we was gonna set up a month ago, is that still gonna happen?
Yeah, it has to happen.
Well, is there a reason why we haven't kinda got that done?
Well, we've been doing budget.
Well, I understand that, but we can't.
We have real reason to set it up now that we're getting close to doing the bondage. So I agree, we need to do that.
Brine. Is there a reason we can't use liquid brine, or we don't use liquid brine?
Oh, we just don't have the dispensers. I mean, we could.
Well, they're cheap. Can we get it free from the state?
You have to buy the calcium chloride, but, I mean, that's.
I talked to somebody that said they just go to the state and get it for free.
No. Yeah,
Who is
I'm
it?
sure, yeah. I mean, we can go get salt from them, but they're gonna charge us. So, I mean, I'm sure the calcium chloride would be the same. I mean, you'd have to pay for that too. But,
That's the stuff that they put in the
brine,
tanks that they
calcium chloride,
spray.
yeah, it can actually go to 17 below. So, I mean, that's the difference between our salt. Our salt can go I think about 17 degrees, but if you add the geo melt, we can go down to about 10 degrees. Once you get below 10 degrees, then the salt's not even working. So when you get the geo melt or the calcium chloride, the hypochloride, then you can go like what they're doing with the
But you
highway.
can spread it on ahead of time.
Yeah, you can pre-treat, but
Wash it off.
it did, again, it's not much, but yeah, I mean,
They pre-treat the bridge.
Because I'm really
yeah, mainly the bridges,
disappointed,
they bridge fast.
I'm really disappointed in our streets right now. I think we did a really bad job this last ice, keeping them clean. I mean, it's terrible. And I was just trying to look for ways that we could possibly make that better. And if you pre-treat them with that brine, you eliminate a lot. The state's highway is perfectly clear, and they've been scraping it and spreading that brine on it for the last 2 days. But as long as you're on top of the hill, you can slide to the dry road to get home.
Right.
And there's a lot of streets in town that haven't been hit with nothing.
Well, actually, they've all been hit.
No,
Just-
no, they haven't.
Well, according to
They have not been.
my people, but yeah,
Our people,
yeah.
So is the brine calcium chloride or is
Yeah,
it beet
yeah.
juice?
No, it's got calcium chloride. Calcium hypochlorite is what it is.
you got something, Earl?
Yep, I just, you got a half-inch of ice out there, pretty hard to work it. And we didn't have brine, so,
Something to look into.
yeah, in the past, our DPWs and street crews said they don't want brine, so.
Yeah, I mean, I added salt or sand this year. They never want to do sand, so I've added sand, before it was just, they'd always just do 100% salt, and they would only salt the intersection, so, and that was the guidance, it's a change, so, he's used to only doing 3 ton of thing, I mean, he has it calculated what he wants to do and everything, so, it's, we're working through change, but, when we're putting down way more than they did last, and like I said, you see, we put down a lot more than we've done in the last 3 years. I mean, it was one of our issues with the first, incident we had is we went into the year with 70 tons and we used that almost in the first incident, and, it was a change for him. That's not what, he thought 70 ton would last him half the winter. But of course, it's been a different winter too.
I just think it's worth looking into to see if we can do something different than what we're doing, because what we're doing didn't work.
Right, I agree. I mean, again, like infrastructure, our vehicle and our fleets are pretty poor. I mean, so you're talking, between our sanders and salt, we have 2 sanders we're running. We ran all day today, ran yesterday, and one of those sanders actually has a pretty good spread pattern. The other one is almost like a dog trail. So,
So that part needs fixed too.
right, yeah, and trust me,
Because
we're working
I
on
can
that.
scoop it out and
Right.
spread it better
Yeah,
than
that's
that.
what I told him. You can stand in the back, show the shovel and throw it out better than that.
So this door is open, what are we gonna do about cleaning up the sand? Because the street sweeper is
Junk.
horrible.
Yeah.
And
That's
we're
coming
putting
in
the
the spring.
sand
We'll
out,
deal with
what
that
are
in
we
the
gonna do
spring.
then?
Yeah, we'll deal with that in the spring. Yeah, but I know.
You wanna know how, several years ago, I was on vacation in Mexico and they had a big storm. There was 3 feet sand drifts in the street. Each guy was out there with a wheelbarrow, a broom, and a shovel.
Well, that's another thing with the brine, you don't have the cleanup mess that you have with sand.
We've,
Just kills all the
we've asked that
vegetation
question
everywhere.
before, and we're recommended.
I'm just
not
trying
go that
I'm
direction.
just trying to remember who told me that they just went out to the State Department and got it for free.
And I had people calling today wanting to buy salt and stuff off us. They said they could buy it from us from the city. So I was like, no. So
Where do we get our ice melt?
It comes out of Kansas. I mean, yeah, right now, it's the only place you can get salt right now.
So like our bag dye, do we use bag dye smelt around for the sidewalks around
Yeah, we buy that by the pallet. I don't know where
where we're at?
I have no idea.
It goes below 0.
Yeah, that's calcium chloride. It's just, crystal form, but yeah.
Would potash be cheaper?
I don't know if you can use that. I don't know if you can use that. I don't know if they're letting you get that anymore, are they?
Yeah, I go out to Golden Pearl, get 2 5-gallon buckets. Gives me 2 5-gallon buckets for the fire station,
I
but
can look at
it doesn't have a temperature. It'll melt on anything, and it's fertilizer. So
Yeah.
make the grass green.
That's the environmental issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the geo melt that we're also using that, it affects our, we do have storm sewer and sanitary sewer crossover, so the geo melt does have effect, but it's limited. So I don't know, we gotta watch what we add to that stuff, so. Yeah, that's one of our issues with our plant and cost going up is BOD.
That's why I was thinking maybe we need to look into the brine.
So we talked about that, so again, what truck you put it on, where it's gonna go and all that, so that's definitely, I'd be up for that, for sure.
I don't think I have anything else.
You want to do closed session in here or in the other room?
I'll just go and do it in here.
You need, grab that, you mind putting that down?